Hello, Adnan.
Mike.
Hi.
Yeah, no, they're just playing games because there's no way that under any circumstances the records can be wiped out.
That's what I was assuming, but I thought it was very interesting that he was told that. And I think that's been used to bend the minds of people to do things they otherwise would not do. They were recreating records, he said.
No, they're not recreating records. What they're trying to do
falsifying records.
Falsifying and hiding.
Yeah.
Hiding, because the problem is all of the debt has been rolling over for over 30 years.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe 35 years. But in any case, it's molded to such a situation that each original obligation became what they call a basket, because every time they extended the loan, they created a new ISIN. And about a month ago, we looked at one instrument. We were trying to negotiate with the system, or the people in the system. So I gave him one instrument to do research on, and it was from Austria. So the one original instrument that I gave them, they opened it up on the screens, not the Fed screens, but general information screens.
Yeah.
And there were 65,000 instruments underneath that one instrument.
I understand how that works now.
Yeah. All right. So basically, the original obligations, because they keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and whatever they put off, whenever there's a new ISIN created against the extension, then they take that ISIN and reuse it again and again, and then that becomes like literally a Christmas tree setup, the primary instrument on top, and then it bellows out.
Yeah.
And the thing is, some of these instruments, my instruments, the original ones in value are so large that they've created, and that afterwards, when they start using it again, they go into creation of liabilities again, and which creates exuberant values. Now, the compounding of all the collective interests, they're showing approximately anywhere from 29, 28 to 54%. And because it's been rolling over, I would have to presume that it's not 28, that's an abbreviation, but 280 to 540% interest. Which is, at this point, because of the accelerated ratio of the obligations and the maturities, that's basically causing the Christmas tree to have a bigger and bigger skirt every day.
Yeah.
I mean, if I said that the system was trading $1 trillion a day, which is by means no way, maybe $1 centillion a day, just to keep up with the interest payments that are being calculated.
Novacentillion, is that what goes beyond a trillion?
Yeah.
Okay.
It goes beyond a quintillion. It goes beyond...
yeah.
I mean...
Other names.
Yeah, other names. My position has gone past... before, it was a joke when they said, oh, he's got $1 gazillion.
Yeah.
Well, that joke terminology became that in England it's 360 zeros at the end of the number.
Yeah.
In the U.S. it's 640 zeros at the end of the number. And even to say that each one of the accounts is holding gazillions of dollars is a conservative calculation. Now, you saw my one UBS account. That had 641 digits in it. But that 641 was to the 10th power.
It's just...
So that... Yeah, it's just numbers.
Ridiculous.
There is no mainframe mother-computer system that is able to calculate the actual value. The only thing they are able to do, and they are doing that barely, is actually calculating the interest liabilities and the interest income ratios. That's why I said the accounting firms are the true criminals, and the credit rating institutions, based upon the fact that, if they actually put out the true position of the credit valuations and the actual accounting structures, first of all, they don't know how to work in quintillions and gazillions and whatever. So what they do is just dummy up numbers, abbreviated numbers, in the context of the situation. And the system is no longer able to meet the position of those liabilities.
For a person who has understood the real value of money and how it could be used, all this is so off-planet stupidity that it's beyond imagination to create this kind of hell.
Well, I asked all of these people who are quote-unquote powers to be, and of course they're in the governmental structures, along with whatever substrates of the governmental structures. I said, why in God's name would you create these types of accounts? He said, it's only a scoreboard. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, basically it means whoever's got more numbers has the most amount of power.
And you have the greatest numbers.
I have the greatest numbers because right now the updates are running at 1 terabyte a second.
I just don't see the point.
I don't see the point either, but the thing is, when you're talking about the historic stupidity, because don't forget, this is going back even before the Marshall Plan. This is going back into the 1400s or even before that. With
the first creation of fiat banking.
No, first creation of credit lines.
Yeah.
Because credit lines were actively functioning before banking systems came into being. And the first credit line was actually formed through the spice route. The reason being that the merchants were having a problem receiving payments because between China and the Western world, there was a 7 or 8 day lag on the payments.
Oh.
So what they did was they gave IOUs, which was basically a credit line, and they had agents on the other side. So now, rather than giving cash, plus they were getting ripped off on the routes by these crooks or the bandits or whatever you want to call them in those days. So the fact of the matter is the only thing they were able to steal was a document authorizing the release of payments. So that was the first position of the credit that was formed in historic positions.
Interesting. It would be so much better if just people paid each other cash,
Well, they used to. The problem was because of the travel time, 7 or 8 days, because a lot of these merchants were getting there and they didn't have the cash once they delivered the product, so they didn't have sufficient money to pay back the passage going back.
Of course.
Because they weren't coming back empty either.
Yeah.
So they needed to pay for the inventory they were dropping off. Well, receive payment for the inventory they dropped off, and to pay for the inventory they were buying. So rather than wait 7 or 8 days for the complete journey, going back and forth to receive their money, then going back to pick up the other goods and this and that, they set up voucher situations. And these credit lines were, they had agents on both sides, and the documents were presented for payments. So whichever side they got to, they were able to cash out, all right? And, of course, the people that gave the credit line were making a percentage from the credit line.
The first tool to make money with money.
Yeah. Because what they were doing was giving them the advantage of the of 8 days, and plus they didn't have to go through the expense of traveling.
Yep.
So to pay anywhere from 1 to 7% fee of the profits, or whatever they negotiated, was much cheaper for them. And in the interim, they can increase their business by picking up inventory on the other side and bringing that back for sale again from the other side.
Sounds like a good deal, you know.
At that time it was. And it lasted for 500-600 years like that, maybe more. And then I think the first bank, from what I was able to see, was formed in Italy. Monte Paschi, I think, was the first bank that was formed. I don't know if there were any other ones before that, but so that created the banking institution that started trading on loans and negotiable papers and so forth. And that's how it started. And of course, by the 1800s, the Grand 50-Year Plan, which was orchestrated through Amsterdam by the royal families with these think tanks that they used to put together, they orchestrated the formation of the 1929 crash. They also orchestrated the colonization and the monetary commitment of obligations of debt back in those days. And this way they would come in and pick up the sovereignty of the nations based upon the money they owed. And then after 1929 or so, they converted that to what they called the IMF and the World Bank. And the World Bank and the IMF was a useful tool in basically enslaving the nations into a structure of debt. The problem is the World Bank and IMF collapsed back in '87 under the liabilities, and when I became the underwriter of their liabilities, then they basically were stuck in the situation. And now they're trying to wiggle themselves out, but I'm not going to give them any possibility or a chance to wiggle out. Yeah. You know, because now at least I have the power, and then as long as there's a civilian controlled situation, I can reinstate the sovereign dispositions.
Adnan, through all of your years in banking, I'm sure you have contemplated what could work, what would work. Well,
the thing is, look, you don't create a new wheel and put it on an old horse cart. So what you have to do is unfreeze the rusted portion of the wheel and get it to turn initially. Okay? So you have to start working again. And once you're in motion, then what you do is you create the evolutionary cycles of that motion. Because now you're moving towards a different passageway.
Yes.
All right. And the evolutionary cycle is, of course, the first thing that can unify the stability positions is a unified currency under unified governmental oversights, which in turn would be oversighted as well.
Those are the mechanics, but have you thought of anything about... like I've considered that humanity needs to consider the needs of humans. They study, rest, and play, and on all the levels, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And
of course. Well, at the same time, you implement programs which take care of those situations.
Of course, yes.
Okay? Because that's a part of the motion. See, the thing is, you have to also take for account human nature in various regions and sectors and history. Because, look, we've got humanity, we have, all right, intellectual capacity individuals. I'm not denying that fact. But the thing is, you have to realize the majority of the world population is 1 foot away from the Stone Age.
Yeah.
And I mean away, because they haven't, in certain cases, haven't been able to even make that first step. Because you've got thousands and billions of people who are living in dirt shacks. There's no running water. There's no toilet facilitation.
It would be so simple to change all of that.
That's what it is. That's why once the wheel is turning, you first create the stabilization and educational formats where that chain comes to change.
Yes.
Okay? You have to bring humanity up to a functional level. You can't, we're not looking for...
I do agree. They need food, they need shelter, they need security, and they need...
And they need education.
Yes.
They need education. And based upon that, once they reach that level, then there's the evolutionary conversions, which will evolve,
Well, that will happen by itself.
Yeah. Well, everything needs a guideline, all right? Because... people, if you let them do things, they're like children, Because
as long as they are not self-aware, they are, yes.
Yeah. And so what you have to do, initially, you have to show them the way. They have to learn the situation. And once they learn, and, it's not just 1% of the world, but the majority of the world that's working together. No, that one I need. Wait. So that's the whole situation. We have to initially get a unified understanding going. Okay. Once we're at that point, then we formulate a social development structure, which brings up to not inside the mouth, which brings up the entire structure to a workable level, where we create jobs, where we create a normal structured commerce, a fair trade, a fair goods and value pricing structure. We formulate the positions of the government so the government employees are earning enough money to basically go on. So you don't have to go through the bribery cycles to make a living.
How will we be able to compensate for I'm thinking that there should be a kind of model society for the people that are aware that could provide a society and say, look, here's how to do it.
Well, we have sample text formats for these structures. They're ready to develop. We have a project which is ready to go in Brazil as soon as we can get the money. And it becomes self-sufficient and self-functional.
Yeah.
We have all of these things ready to go. We have the policies ready to go and implement. But the thing is, we have to get off the ground first.
Yes.
And what you're getting off the ground with is basically you're fighting the ignorance of pre-existing systems. I'm not even going to blame a country or people.
No, everybody has been born into it.
Yeah, and because that's the whole situation, is you are born into it. And the thing is, you're born with a mindset of prejudice towards a certain type of a thing. Whether you know it or you don't know it.
I do agree. Yeah.
So that's the whole situation. Look, when I talk about people and nationalities and ethnicities and things, I don't talk about it in relation to prejudice.
I understand.
But the thing is, when I talk about it, I say the truth as much as I can comprehend from my evaluations.
Yes. And that has to be retranslated to different languages so other people can comprehend.
Yeah. And the thing is, it has to be realized that if I do say something bad, I'm not saying it because of the situation that I'm trying to ridicule the people. It's just that something that has happened.
Yes, I understand.
On an evolutionary type of a situation, on the mindset of these people, on what they were brought up to learn. Because, look, people throughout different cultures are brainwashed into accepting certain patterns of behavior. The same thing with religion. Okay?
Exactly.
So there is no good religion, there is no bad religion, all right? But the thing is, it depends on how the religion was used to formulate and structure social balances, okay? Whether it was used for social balance. But the thing is, you cannot argue with somebody about their religion and try to make interpretation of it. You can give them knowledge of what you think without prejudice. And in many cases, that knowledge becomes an insult to them. How dare you not believe the way I believe? You know? That's why I don't go into religion so much, because, look, my concept is very simple. I believe in God. But the thing is, I have enough capacity to make my own determinations of to the moral aspects of God and requirements that are made of a human being to live in the context of the spiritual form. You know?
Well, the problem is that you can see from the top down clearly, but you cannot see from the bottom up.
No, that's the whole thing. And people have to eventually come to the point where, you know, it's a matter of accepting other people's interpretations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, look, I accept your interpretation. If you want me to be a Jew, okay, I'll be a Jew. If you want me to be a Christian, I'll be a Christian. If you want me to be a Muslim, I'll be a Muslim. Because it's all the same.
Yes. Just give me the space to live my life in harmony and create vitality, and we'll be fine.
You know, the irony about all of these situations is if these people actually read the books, all three of them or whatever, they'll see that they're carbon copies of each other.
Oh, yes. The message is the same.
Yeah,
it's about forgiveness, acceptance, living, love, harmony, and nature.
Yeah, but it's also the same in the context of the prophets and everything else. There's no deviations on these situations.
No. They all have the flood.
Yeah, they all, it depends on which printing company printed it, you know?
It's a different pizza flavor.
That's all. It's not even a different flavor. It's the same ingredients, except one was kept in the oven a little bit longer, and one was a little less, and one was done with a different oven. And that's about it.
Yeah.
Because interpretation always, like any language, changes from the region, but it's the same goddamn story. Give me a break.
It's the same source.
Yeah, it is the same source. Exactly. You know? And, there's slight deviations of the situation, but the deviations keep the people who are running the religions in business. And, that's the unfortunate aspect of religion is the leadership structures are in a business. You know? If they weren't in a business, why would they have trillions of dollars worth of real estate assets when they should be basically spending it on the people to, show God's way?
One would assume that was a logical conclusion for people to assume, but people are not logical. They are irrational beings.
Look, one time I spent a little time in Fatima, not for religious purposes. I had some business there. But in any case, I went to there's a square over there, almost like Rome, where they have prayers and everything else, and there's busloads of people that come there every day, And these people, you have to respect them because they're all good people. They have a pure belief, and that's why they make the pilgrimage there,
Mm-hmm.
Now, what got to me was there's a little area where they light the candles, which is fine. Candle lighting is in all the religions actually, and you pray to God, and which is again fine. There's no problem with praying to God. But they also have a drop box over there, and I found out that people that can't afford it bring their life savings and put it into that drop box. because they think that their prayers are going to be fulfilled. And I hope their prayers are fulfilled. I'm not criticizing. But what really got me, the Dropbox didn't get me angry. What got me angry was the Dropbox had a conveyor belt.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
And when they told me that the drop boxes had conveyor belts that came into a central location for sorting, that reminded me of the casino offices that take all the chips and all the gambling money.
And it also gives the giver the impression that they are the only one.
It gives them the impression but the thing is, look, I saw people who were crippled. And the thing is, they were all praying, and I hope that every single one of their prayers comes true. But they were down on their knees. Some of these people could barely walk. They were down on their knees on this sort of marble path going towards the center of where the prayers were going on. They were praying and, walking on their knees. And I'll tell you the truth, my heart went out to those people. And I said, look, and the people who were in charge, I didn't have too much respect for. The parishioners, I had 100% and more respect for. Because their beliefs were 110% true. All right? And like I said, I wish that every single one of their prayers would come. So, being curious about art, I went into the cathedral to basically look around. Unfortunately, when I walked in there, there was a prayer thing going, so I didn't want to interfere, so I was standing in the back. Just looking at the art and the statues and basically looking at the sermon as well. Or if that's what it's called, to tell you the truth. I'm not sure. Well, any case, everybody had their heads down because the cardinal was in front. Okay? And me, I don't bend my head to any man. I bend my head to God and the belief and the spirituality of it. But I don't bend my head to any man. Ever. And, I was looking at him, not in a disrespectful way, but the fact that I didn't have my head down, I mean, this man's eyes was like, how dare you? Then I sensed the hatred in his eyes. And this is a person who's acting as a representative of God.
Yeah.
Look, you can't represent God when you're so egotistically self-endowed. And when you have hate because people are not bowing to you. And that's what was coming out of his eyes. Hate. So I just turned around and walked out because otherwise I would have said, fuck you. No. And that would have been disrespectful to all the people who were praying,
But you see, this has been the nature of the school of life, Adnan, at least from the findings of the thousands of people that have worked with hypnosis on the human mind. When we die, we reintegrate these things, we understand what we're doing, and we come back and get it better through these restrictions. And now the restrictions are lifting, and people will be able to live in a different way, but they just do not understand the whole paradigm shift. It's beyond them.
No, the thing is, look, there's a lot of adjustments that have to be made. All right, the realization takes a full cycle. All right, but the thing is, you can't be the only person. You can't be the island. You have to realize your island is in an ocean, and you have to realize that the ocean is a mass of people, and that ocean is your environment. Exactly. That ocean is is your surroundings. All right. So the thing is, you have to see your environment, protect your environment.
There is no separation.
There is no separation because, I refer to humanity as animals, and we have to realize that that's exactly what we are. I'm not saying one group is an animal or the other group is any worse than, but we are a species of animals.
We are biological.
Yeah. And we have the ability to think, but so do the other animals. Our only big ability is the fact that we can communicate. All right? The problem is we have to realize other animals communicate too. Which we seem to think the entire universe is centered around us. We are only a part of the universe. We are only a fraction of the reality.
I do agree.
So that reality will function with or without humanity. Now it's the reality of humanity to come to sense that they are not the intricate center point of existence.
Well, I would like to say it this way. It would say humanity on Earth, because humanity universally is a much bigger prospect.
Yeah, it is. I agree with that. I do agree with you on that respect. Yeah, because humanity exists on multiple platforms or dimensions.
Yes.
You have the spiritual humanity, which does exist after death. Okay, but the thing is, if given the time, I could probably give you scientific proof of it.
Well, I've investigated that more than enough myself. I have my own proof.
Yeah. So that does exist in that situation. You have the physical, carbon matter structures, which is what we have, and we go through all of the nonsense of it,
Which is what we have been talking about.
Yeah, and that's the thing is everybody is stuck on that self-gratification concept. And that's one of the... And I'm not saying self-gratification is bad, because it's one of the survival mechanisms of the human animal. Because with the self-gratification, you're basically facilitating your desire for shelter, for food, for air, for water, your basic clothing, your basic requirements to be able to sustain yourself, and live.
Self-gratification can be very positive and can be very negative.
Yeah, in the same context. But the thing is, you have to be able to realize that the levels which exist.
Yep.
All right? And many people don't look for the levels. Many people don't see interaction with others, or else they see the interaction with others for the purpose of manipulating the interaction for their own benefits, for their own egos, for their own beliefs.
All of this is a great consequence that civilization has been left-brained orientated. If education was right-brain and left-brain oriented in integration, none of this would happen.
Yeah, but the thing is, don't forget, most of the social power structures have basically dissolved any of the educated principles. Look, African culture was developed long before a lot of the other cultures.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why you had Sheba, the first empire. All right, which became the Egyptian Empire.
That was also the start of the gold empire on the earth, as far as I understand.
Then you had at the same time, the evolution of the Chinese.
Yeah.
All right, which the Africans had tremendous scientists at that time. All right, but the thing is, the African situation was dissolved because it was becoming competition. All right, so you have the first elimination of the intellectual capacity. Then you had the Chinese. Well, they were nomadic, and nomadic nations existed on war situations. They basically took what they needed. So that's what created the evolution of the Mongolian empires and so forth. Again, the intellectuals were, even in those situations, eliminated because they created a perception of power, and whoever was controlling these mechanisms of the empires, they were a threat to them. So what do you do with a threat? You cut their heads off. And what they did, then you had the Byzantine Empire, Syrian Empire, Babylonian Empire, Persian Empire. All of them did the same thing. If there were people who had the ability to think beyond what was required of them, they were eliminated. So humanity has basically been cutting its own nose for centuries. And it's not one specific group. It's all of the groups have been destroying intellectual capacities. I mean,
and again, I do believe the nature of this game has been concocted as a game itself to have the negative and the positive to continue the school itself.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they've been, it's a control mechanism.
Of course it is.
All right, so basically, the guy who held the biggest stick was the one who was in charge, and he was the smartest one, technically.
Yeah.
You know? But the thing is, the guy who showed him how to build the stick became a threat, so after the stick was built, the guy that showed him how to build it was killed.
And then he forgot how to learn how to really master the stick.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. And so what we have to do is we have to go past the position where intellectual, social evolutions are restricted. Okay? And that's what we're at a point right now.
We need to reward intelligence.
Yeah. Because look, compensation is very important for the human species because one of the conflicts with communism is the fact that when everything was guaranteed a salary and a job, nobody did anything. All right? It created stagnation. It didn't create development. All right? The free world societies under the republics or the democrats, well, that went the complete opposite scenario where it created absolute greed. So what has to be done is a social interface structure through non-political formats has to be formulated where the sustainability of the individual is able to go on, but at the same time, the sustainability gives an opportunity for that individual to expand themselves on a social, educational, and profit type of a structure, because human animals want gratification through toys or numbers or something, but it has to be restricted into how much, you know. I mean, look, the power I have it because it's existing protocols. Okay, it's recognized, and none of my assets are illegal. What is done to me is illegal. That's something else. Okay, and that goes back to the same situation. You've got the people with the stick trying to control the expansionism, the evolutionism. Okay, because they want to keep things as they are because they're happy with the money that they're making and stuffing in their pockets. They don't care about the other guy getting screwed. All right? Whereas I do. I mean, they've even built up a saying that, you know, no good deed gets unpunished. No good man shall survive.
Yeah.
You know, that's, well, I'm sorry. I'm good, but I'm not that good. If it means I'm going to have to terminate your positions in order for me to survive, yes, I'm going to do it as a survival instinct. And if it means that the social benefits in the long run are better for the entire global community from my actions, even though it's creating hardships right now. The hardships are not created by me, but the fact that the established ignorance, and that's the best and politest way I can describe it, is trying to maintain the status quo. Well, the status quo is not acceptable.
Well, what you're doing, because of your position, you are able to say, okay, this is the only chance for wisdom to be in the seat of power. Now we're going to do it this way, and if you don't like it, get off the planet.
That's it. Simplest way of saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, in the battle for the evolutionary cycle, I mean, I've taken a lot of abuse. Look, they've thrown everything you can throw at me. You know, they've cut my access to my money. They've murdered family members.
You've been kidnapped?
I've been kidnapped, which was basically more of an extortion such a situation, because I knew that technically they couldn't harm me. And so I used that against them while they were holding me. You know?
Yeah.
Look, I'm smart enough, and I know I grew up in the streets. All right.
So did I.
And the thing is, I know these people and their mindsets. So they're not going to teach me any tricks. You know, just because I didn't do what they did doesn't mean that I don't know how to do what they do. All right. Or push them to shove that I wouldn't do what they do.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, if you're going into a true battle, you know, that concept of turning the other cheek doesn't fly with me.
I think that has been one of the things that has kept the wise people off the streets. They've turned the other cheek.
No. I don't turn the other cheek. I'm sorry.
But that is one of the mindsets that has enabled them to kill the wise people, because the wise people have turned their other cheek before.
Yeah, look, I'm a passive person, you know, who believes in God and everything else. But the point of the matter is, I'm also a passive person who doesn't take shit. All right? If you threaten me, if you threaten my family, I'm going to fight you in whatever capacity I have. You know? And I think that's generally an American concept as well.
Yeah.
You know, most of the Americans are, self-defense, you know? Because, look, otherwise, if I don't do it, then everybody's doomed.
Nature is equipped for self-defense.
Yeah. And the thing is, my actions, based upon my beliefs and, you know, not everything is perfect, because no human being is perfect, all right? I'm sure I screwed up 1,001 times, which I know I did in certain respects. But the thing is, it's a learning curve as well.
Yep, we all have to go through it.
Yeah, because the situation is that no one has had to deal with what I'm dealing with. You know, because there was no time in history ever that all of the sovereign positions were in one hand, even though they tried. The money was in one hand, and technically I do have the judiciary rights based upon the sovereign positions I hold as well. So in essence, I hold the first judiciary cycle rights. You know? Which is their biggest conflict with me was the fact that I realized all of these things. You know, nobody educated me into this. I had to learn it all myself, and what rights I do have.
Yeah.
You know?
Adnan? I'd like to ask you a question about the paradigm of profit, just on a philosophical point of view. I've come to the realization that because we have operated a profit-based paradigm, we have actually experienced the power of taking as a way of being. If we turn that to teach the people the power of giving, which is where it is all at, then
a lot of people have that ability already.
Oh, yes, they do. But
more so, see, the thing is, it's not recognized in this context. And one of the things is, a lot of people give so much without questioning.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's where they fall into a pitfall, a fall, because they're so trusting, because they're so giving, they're abused. Look,
they believe everybody is like themselves.
Yeah, look, these charities, best example of giving. People will give out millions of dollars to charities. All right? But, I think the biggest percentage I ever saw the charity actually using for what they are registered entity as being was around 7%. And I think one group was bragging because they actually spend 10% of what they take in. So what the hell happens to the rest of the 90%? Which means that they are abused. Look, the same thing with some of the biggest established charities. The Red Cross.
This is the abuse of the power of giving, but the people that are actually doing the giving are learning spiritual lessons, and they are growing on that, and the other people are not growing. But
that's already there, though.
Yeah,
majority of the people, that's already there, Mike.
Yeah,
it's the small percentages which are grabbing. That's the conflict.
Yes.
And once you control, look, the total number of people who are problematic in the financial sector right now, whether it's governmental or bankers or accountants or whatever, because it's not just one. That's why when I say, you're blaming the bankers, well, look, the bankers are being permitted to do this by the politicians. Okay? They're being permitted to do this through the accounting firms which lie for them. They're permitted by the credit rating institutions, by the intelligence agencies which feed off these institutions.
And the lawyers that make the laws for them.
The lawyers that finagle the laws for them. All right? But there's a whole structure. And the structure collectively, from the last count that I received, which I suspect is correct, is 1 million people, okay, who are involved in the fraud. Now, when you compare 1 million collectively in comparison to the 7 billion people on this planet,
it gets pretty ridiculous.
It becomes a ridiculous percentage that it doesn't even come out to 1%.
Yeah.
So, collectively, if we've got 7 billion people who deserve their rights, and it's only 1 billion that's giving their problems, hell, it'll reach a point where if it needs to be, you just take him out.
Right.
But you're not talking about one country, you're talking worldwide. You take him out, judiciary, or any other way, because they're affecting the lives and the securities of normal human beings.
Yeah.
All right? If the military or the intelligence operations have the right to do certain things based upon the national security, well, this is global security. I'm sorry. They want to walk down the street, they're going to assume the liability of walking down the street and possibly not getting across the street if they continue their actions.
Yeah.
And I mean everybody. I don't give a damn if they're a politician or if they're accountants. If they want to assume the liability for it, well, that's the liability ticket that they're pushing towards right now. Okay? Yeah. And technically, right now, they're already killing each other off because there's no money, and they're stealing from each other whatever there is around, and they're killing each other off. Look,
there's another problem with this as well, and it's stopping all the innovation. The people that want to do good things are just blocked.
There you go. There you go. And those are the most important things that need to come out, because that will create the evolution of social structures.
Yeah.
That will give them the ability to move on, Anyways, but, hopefully soon that we'll get into a point where we'll get the wheel turning. And, there's kerosene on the rust spots. So eventually that rust spot has to break. If it's not from one position, it'll break from another position.
Yeah.
And, I am an American, even though I was born in Turkey. And I have to respect America with all of its faults and make sure that it gets on the right track.
Yeah.
Because the majority of the Americans are good people. Again, it's a small percentile which muck it all up.
Yes.
Okay? You got the people from the Yale Club who create banking policies, because the policies implemented by the banks are created through the Yale Club and the Harvard Club. All right? In conjunction with Skull and Bones and XYZ. And they've got the chance to correct themselves. If they don't, I put out every single one of their dirty laundry, and they're under criminal liability, and they will get, look, they'll be worried whether they're going to be able to walk into their car or not.
Yeah.
This is not a threat. I plan to do nothing to them. But once people know what they've done to them, I guarantee you there'll be a hell of a lot of angry people. And 7 billion people, you don't want to get angry.
That's true.
Because all of these bankers will turn into chop suey and dog food. And not just the bankers. All these honorary doctors sitting in governments thinking they're something because they were able to buy their doctorate or professorships, and they think they're smart. Well, they're smart. They're smart enough to die if they continue this way. The people will reach a boiling point. The water is just boiling right now. The craziness that's going on will come right back to their door because they are the ones that rang the bell.
Yeah.
All right. And that's what they have to realize. They are at that point. I don't care if it's a military leader, governmental leader, banking leader, educational leader. These are the people who are creating the conflicts, and the people are beginning to realize it, and they know about it. And let's put it, I'm not shy about telling them who is causing the conflicts. And I have no problems telling them. And I think the great majority of people also realize what the vehicles are for this conflict.
Yeah.
All right? And the biggest vehicle is the fact that they don't want people to have their own rights and powers. They want to be able to manipulate it and hoard it all. And that's all it is. It's hoarding of power.
Yes, it is.
Okay? So, at this point, they have a very short window of time to get their shit together. Okay?
Yeah.
If they don't, they call themselves powers to be. I call them the powers that want to be. Because they don't have any power. All the power is vested in my control. They don't own anybody. I own them. And the general population, I claim no ownership over. Okay?
Yeah.
So at that point, all of these people that are egotistically thinks they're bigger than anybody else in this planet, well, they better realize they die like anybody else on this planet. All right? Because that is what they're buying. And it's not from my hands, it's not from my orders, but from the general public. Because they are going to be knocking at their doors real soon. Okay? And I guarantee you they're not going to be walking into a civilian courtroom with the, oh, I didn't know. Bullshit. It wouldn't be the first time that politicians were lined up in the street hanging on their necks.
It's going to be much better to get it over with as long as the people are willing to understand what they have been willing to participate in themselves.
Well, look, the people have been participating in the mass genocidal murder of their own families. Okay?
They've been cooperating in small groups to compete in larger groups.
No, look, the people have allowed a handful of idiots to go out and kill their family members, kick them off their lands, because these are established structures. Well, bullshit. I'm sorry. You can't come into my country or my home and create a war and think that I'm not going to ask you who ordered you to do this. I don't blame the soldiers that are fighting the wars. I blame the person who sent the soldiers for fighting the wars. So if I take the liability, I take it from the generals and not from the soldiers.
Or from Kissinger.
Well, I'm not going to name any specific situations because there's so much dirty water in the system, you know. Let's put it this way. We've got the recycling plant built, and we're ready for all the shit to start flowing into it.
Yeah.
Simplest way of saying it. As crude as it may sound, that's it, you know. There's no whitewashing what they've done. Look, they've killed millions. And in the last, since the 1913 situation, you're talking 500 million people, if not more, that were killed because of these people's indiscretions. And those 500 million people were your uncles, your grandfathers, your grandparents, cousins. And I don't care about which country you're talking about, because it has no borders. No, I'm sorry. Now is the time to pay the price.
And if people really want peace, they have to find peace in themselves. Because peace is an inside job.
That's it. No, but the thing is, they have to realize that they have the power to mandate it and dictate it.
Yes.
Right? The fact that we're a corporate entity and this and that, they own us, that's bullshit. All right. They own you if you allow them. Okay. I'm free. Look, I may have a national passport, I may have this and that, which binds me to a certain country or ethnicity or that. But as far as the situation is concerned, I have my own soul, I have my own body, I will abide by the laws of predications throughout the lands.
And you have your integrity.
I have my integrity. And as long as I am the one who's making the decision as to what happens to me, whether it's good or bad, I am free. All right?
Yeah.
And people need to realize that they have the same exact equal capabilities. So they are, in reality, free. Okay?
Yes, they are.
Unless they find themselves through contractual formats, through stupidity of overspending and overcommitting themselves. In that case, I make no claims to their mental status, and that, in a lot of parts, people do based upon their own simple greed. Yeah. And that's a part of freedom as well. You're allowed to be stupid.
That's very true. You're allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah, but they're not allowed to cry that, we're not free. Yes, you are. You just need to realize it. Okay?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, whoever decides what's going to happen to you is you. Whether it's good, it's bad. You might be in a bad situation, acceptable. But then you change the situation. And to learn how to do that, that's your responsibility.
Very well said. Very well said.
Yeah, that's your responsibility. Look, there's no waiter service. You want something? You get out and you do it. All right? Or else the fact is you realize what rights you do have and you don't have. And if you think that you don't have any rights, well, then you are a slave and you'll never be free. Even if you were left on the middle of an abandoned island, you would still be a slave because you believe you are.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's what the thing. Okay, I gotta go. Nice
okay, Adnan.
Talk
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.